What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and pardon, I might sound a little bit different. When you have a kid, you get sick pretty much 30 times a year. So a little bit of a head cold right now. So just in case I sound a little bit weird throughout this video, that's probably why. But today we are here for our final positional breakdown rankings 2.0, whatever you want to call it, before the NFL scouting combine. And today we're gonna look at my top 10 safeties for the upcoming draft class. And I think that this is absolutely one of the strengths of the draft, as pretty much everyone I'm even going to talk about in the honorable mentions, I think will make a final 53 come opening day. But before we jump into the new rankings, we got to look at the old rankings. And back then, I only did 5 because I wasn't fully comfortable on making a full top 10 list. I had honorable mentions: Lucas, Dennis, Marvell Tell, and Jonathan Abram. And my top 5 was JUAN Johnson. 4 was Khaleke Hudson, who actually went back to school for Michigan. 3 was Taylor Rapp. 2 was CHAUNCEV GARDNER-JOHNSON. And at number 1, we had Deionte Thompson from Alabama. And these rankings came out about midway point of the college football season, and things have changed quite a bit since that time. So without further ado, jumping in to my new top 10, we will look at 4 honorable mentions, and 2 are the same: Lucas Dennis from Boston College and Marvell Tell from USC. I think both these guys excel in one thing and are kind of weak in another. Lucas Dennis is much more of a cover guy, and Marvell Tell's much more of an old schooler in the box. He is kind of a tweener, but he brings a lot more in the run support than he does in coverage ability. But I think both those guys are pretty damn nice. We have Mark McLaurin from Mississippi State and Marquise Blair from Utah. I think all these guys probably going to go as high as round 4, but most likely I feel like they're going to be early day 3 players, round 5, round 6. So with that being said, jumping into our official top 10, at number 10, I have Mike Bell, 6'3", 205 pounds, out of Fresno State. In 2018, he had 87 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, and 8 pass breakups. Positives for Mike Bell: he's a very smart player, a lot of smart decisions. You look at his tape, and I've seen it on a lot of other scouting reports, you see, like, he could have a chance to blow someone up. And you look at a guy 6'3", 205, he holds his weight well. He looks like a thumper, but he will rather make the pass breakup, as you can see by his stats. Or he'll rather try to make a play on the ball and get that turnover than blow someone up. And at that risk of blowing someone up, overcommit, be overly aggressive, maybe whiff on a tackle, and then it's 6 going one way versus 6 going the other way. Those high risk reward players, boomer bust defenders that we see time and time again. He's a smart player. I think he's underrated. And I do think he's a balanced defender in regards to dropping back into coverage, covering tight ends, covering running backs, playing in zone, playing in man, affecting the run, stacking the box. He's pretty good. He's pretty well based. I think he has a great starting point, and he's going to be a guy that plays a long time in the National Football League. The negatives for him, it just kind of goes down to the combine. It's a very common negative that we've had throughout all these videos, is these guys that it's just their athleticism might not flash on tape. It might not flash on game day, but it's a negative. They're kind of almost like assumed that they're not going to be a great athlete until proven otherwise. So the combine will be huge. If Mike Bell can test better than expected, he could creep up into that round 4, round 3 territory. For right now, I have him as round 4 to 6, somewhere in that range, and will contribute on special teams as a rookie, but a very high ceiling for Mr. Mike Bell. Going to number 9, we have JUAN Johnson, 5'10", 190 pounds, out of the U. Out of Miami. In 2018, he had 92 tackles, a tackle and a half for loss, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. The positives for JUAN Johnson: he is a very aggressive player and has lots of proven production at Miami. He's not just some flash in the pan. He's played on a big school, and for the last 3 years has been one of the better statistical safeties in college football. I think he's a good athlete. He should test fairly well at the combine. The negatives for me, I just think this size, because he is so aggressive. Anytime you see a guy that's aggressive in college and they're not the biggest, that doesn't always translate the greatest towards the National Football League. Obviously, the players are bigger, faster, and stronger. And I was looking at one that kind of stuck out, is the Draft Network. They had like 4 or 5 or 3, 4 or 5 different scouting reports on him, and every single one of them came out with questionable ball skills. Now, I not necessarily didn't see that. More often than not, I thought he, when he was near the ball, he'd bat it away, or more so, he'd get hands on the offensive player and kind of make it, he might not be the stat sheet, might not be the pass breakups or the interceptions, but he was still getting there because he's such a great athlete. But a lot of them questioned his ball skills, and then I looked around, and a couple of other websites and other scouts questioned his ball skills. So it came up with glaring weakness that I didn't see it, but enough people did that I should relay to you that is, I guess, the appearing negative of JUAN Johnson. But he is definitely one of my sleepers of this draft class. I think he'll probably go, like I said, around peak. Pretty much everyone beyond him, I think Mike Bell and the honorable mentions, they will peak at round 4, but I think they'll probably be early day 3 when it comes to the draft and where they get selected. Going number 8, we have AMANI Hooker, 6 feet tall, 205 pounds, out of Iowa. In 2018, he had 65 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions, and 7 pass breakups. We look at AMANI Hooker. The positives is he played a little money backer, so that is that versatility. You know, nickel package linebacker, can play in the box, can play outside, and a lot of people do rant and rave about his zone coverage. It does show up on tape. I mean, most Iowa defenders that do get drafted fairly high are very strong zone defenders. We've seen it with Desmond King. We've seen it with Josh Jackson. I think AMANI Hooker, while not as maybe, you know, big body of work like those guys had, I think he is as intriguing a prospect as those guys. And I think you could view his ceiling and production early on similar to those guys. I think the negatives for his game, again, combine will be important. It's kind of tough to kind of grade how good of an athlete he is from his tape at Iowa. And that's really the only negative. I think if he tests very, very well at the combine, looking at his skill set, he could rise. He could definitely be one of those guys that could challenge for my top 5. But for right now, I don't think he's going to test, you know, great. He shouldn't be bad. Shouldn't be any glaring red flags or anything like that. But I think he's just going to test as an above-average athlete. And with that being said, then he kind of fits around number 8 in my rankings. But he is a very intriguing prospect. That is to say the least. Going to number 7 on the list, we have Johnathan Abram. 5'11", 210 pounds, out of Mississippi State. In 2018, he had 99 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 5 pass breakups. When you want to look at the positives, he is a big, aggressive tackler, and I'm kind of surprised. You know, before I saw it, I would have guessed he would have been 6'1", 220. Like, that's how he plays. When I found out he was 5'11", 210, I was a little bit, you know, it doesn't really match up to the tape. He is your old-school style safety. The negatives for him is that he is limited, I think, in coverage ability at the next level, which could propel him into being that money backer. You know, we've seen it with like Deon Buchanan and Mark Barron and stuff like that. It works well in today's NFL. Those guys do translate, but Johnathan Abram is a little bit smaller than those guys. I think both Buchanan and Mark Barron like 6'1", 6'2", 225. So, I mean, from that size limitation, he could just be one of those guys that might not get drafted as high as he should, just because no one really knows how they're going to use him, as he will be kind of viewed, I think, as a jigsaw puzzle, a Swiss Army knife kind of type player, and will be a niche player to certain defenses, but he definitely will be able to excel if he goes to the right scheme. And, you know, personally, I always like the big aggressive guys that have that upside, because you know right away they'll at least be able to contribute on special teams. And I think that's where Johnathan Abram is going to make his money until he can get a more refined role at the next level. Go to number 6, we have JUAN Thornhill, 6 feet tall, 210 pounds, out of Virginia. 2018 stats, he had 98 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 6 interceptions, and 7 pass breakups. Now, he's kind of the inverse of Johnathan Abram. I was watching JUAN Thornhill, I was like, all right, this guy's like you're 6 feet tall, like 190-pound converted corner. But I was very surprised to see that his measurables were like that. I want to see, kind of like Abram and Thornhill, what they measure in at the scouting combine. Because JUAN Thornhill is a converted corner, so that definitely goes into his positives. Positive traits, because he has great coverage ability. It's natural hands, natural fluidity to his hips that a lot of just prototypical safeties don't have. And I do think he is a prototypical free safety. He's a guy that should be able to transition fairly well into the coverages that are going to be asked of a modern day free safety. When you look at the negatives, though, because he is a converted corner, his tackling technique isn't as strong as others in the class. And if teams want that more traditional guy that can tackle and has refined tackling ability right way, they don't have to work on those mechanics. He could look, you know, to slip beyond a couple teams where that might need a safety just because of that. But I don't think too many teams are going to pass up on a safety that can cover running backs and tight ends with the success rate that a guy like JUAN Thornhill can. And I think if he tests well at the combine, he absolutely could squeak into the 3rd round. But much like Abram, probably Hooker, I'm thinking about mid-round grade. Go to number 5. We have Darnell Savage Jr., 5'11", 200 pounds, out of Maryland. In 2018, he had 52 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions, and one of those was a pick 6. Positives for Darnell Savage is he is a great athlete. I think he's a very well-balanced safety in terms of coverage ability, in terms of coming in the box and laying the lumber down on a slot wide receiver, catching the ball across the middle, or a running back. And I personally think when I've looked at other scouting reports to what I've seen in my notes, I think he has underrated coverage skills, because that's something that kind of a lot of other scouts are using against him. And personally, I'm high on Darnell Savage. I had him mocked to my Philadelphia Eagles already. I think he'd be a great fit for us. The negatives for Savage that I can see is his aggressive play style might not translate to the NFL, somewhat similarly to Jaquan Johnson, who we talked about at number 9. Just because Darnell Savage is not the biggest guy, and throwing around, you know, 200 pounds being generous at the college level is a lot different than throwing around 200 pounds against, like, goddamn, like C.J. Anderson, who's like 295-pound running back. So there are some concerns for Darnell Savage from that standpoint, but everything else about him, the fact that he just seems to be getting better, like finding his groove last year with Maryland, I think his ceiling is incredibly high. My pro comparison for him is LaMarcus Joyner. Now from a cover standpoint, LaMarcus Joyner was a converted corner going to safety, so he has, like, kind of like we talked about with Juan Thornhill, a little bit more natural hips to playing in coverage schemes, but I still don't see any glaring weakness in Darnell Savage from a coverage side. Now, I'm not saying he's the best cover safety in the class. There's definitely areas that he needs to work on, but I don't see anything. Like, sometimes you get guys that, like Amari Hooker, zone coverage, but in man coverage, you're kind of typed hipped. I don't know until we see how well he tested the combine. From what I can tell, might not be a guy that you have comfortability as a rookie early on in his career putting him in man schemes. But a guy like Darnell Savage, I wouldn't feel like he's going to be exposed just yet. Now, understand you got to put certain realistic expectations on it, and I really do think Darnell Savage is the sleeper safety that no one's really talking about. You look at a lot of rankings, there's only a couple sites that might even have him sniff in the top 5, but he heard it here first. This guy here is probably going to go round 4, round 5, maybe round 3 if he tests well at the combine, and there is a legitimate shot he can be regarded as the best safety from this class. Going to safety number 4, I have NASIR ADDERLEY, 5'11", 200 pounds, out of Delaware. In 2018, he had 48 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 9 pass breakups. Look at NASIR ADDERLEY is about as traditional of a small school plus minus that I've ever done. He's a great athlete, he's well balanced, he's good in coverage, he's a great tackler, but all it comes down to the negatives is the level of competition. Is he good in coverage against guys that are not going to sniff the NFL? Can he tackle guys that have nowhere near NFL size? Those are going to be the big questions and concerns. I think he's going to test well at the combine. All reports said that he had a pretty good pro day, maybe not as good as some people would have expected because he got a lot of hype there for a little bit. But I still, like, from what limited tape, I haven't seen a whole lot of his work because there's only so much that's available from Delaware. But I see a lot from my pro comparison of Glover Quinn. Glover Quinn, for quite a long time, was regarded as one of the most underrated safeties for the Detroit Lions. Very, very good production, good tackler, was able to hold his own in coverage and had some of the better interception numbers. I think he was like the interception leader a couple years ago. So pretty high regard there. I think they have very similar body types, and obviously Glover Quinn had a really nice combine. I think NASIR ADDERLEY could get kind of close to that, and he might be the most generic comp. I haven't seen this one yet, but I think, because everyone does the pro comps and stuff more closely to the combine weekend, you're going to see this one popping up more and more. If NASIR ADDERLEY can hit the levels of Glover Quinn, who I think unfortunately just got released from the Detroit Lions, that is a really, really good career. And I think ADDERLEY, some mocks have him going in the first round. Personally, I feel a little bit more comfortable saying that he is a second round, no later than third round prospect. But I'm fairly confident thinking that he will go in the second round at some point. Going to number 3 on my list, we have Taylor Rapp, 6 feet tall, 210 pounds, out of Washington. In 2018, he had 58 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 4 pass breakups. Look at the positives. He is the best tackling defensive back in this class. He is your prototypical in the box safety, but he is also solid in coverage. Now, his coverage is not necessarily going to be his strength, but it's definitely not a weakness, or else he wouldn't be up this high on my list. But the fact that you could still, he is your prototypical guy that can play strong safety, cover the middle of the field a little bit, and also stay on the field as a nickel linebacker. He is going to be able to contribute like that right away as a rookie, which is very high. The negatives for him is just his combine will be important. Again, another one of these bigger safeties that we don't know what his actual range will be. Is he going to, he shouldn't test incredibly well, but he could be a guy that could sniff around top 5 in some of the testings that will go on at the scouting combine. When we look at a guy like Taylor Rapp, it's never going to be his athleticism that wows you. It's going to be his high football IQ, his mechanics, and his physicality. So my pro comparison for him is Tony Jefferson, who spent time with the Arizona Cardinals, now a member of the Baltimore Ravens, known for, pretty good coverage ability, but also you got to respect him as a tackler, one of the better tackling safeties, and a hard hitter, and just an goddamn physical force across the middle of the field. So I do like Taylor Rapp. I think he could go in the first round. I would probably put late first to mid second round grade on Taylor Rapp right now. Going to number 2 on my list, it is Deionte Thompson, 6'2", 195 pounds, out of Alabama. In 2018, he had 78 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, and 3 forced fumbles. You look at the positives for Deionte Thompson. Great athlete. He's a good tackler, and when he is good in coverage, it is great. You don't know what that means in just 1 second, but when he is on point, pretty much look at the first half of the season for Alabama, he absolutely looked like a guy that could even sniff the top 10 in the draft. You look at the second half, things kind of, boom or bust. He turned into a boom or bust type play, which goes to the negatives. That aggressiveness, his aggressiveness to try to, it felt like anytime there was a 50-50 ball, he was going all in to try to get a pick 6. And when that didn't work out, wide receiver would catch the ball and make a big play on Alabama's defense. So his inconsistency and that boomer bust aggressiveness that we saw a lot during the second half of the season for Alabama has him no longer being my #1 prospect, but he still is a legitimate first-round prospect. And for a pro comparison, I gave former Alabama safety Clinton Dix. I mean, it is, it kind of always feels like a cop-out when you compare a player to a guy that just played the same school, but teams recruit to get that mold. They want that Nick Saban safety, and that is exactly what Deionte Thompson is. And I think that if he can get similar production to Clinton Dix, he is going to be well worth a first-round investment for whatever team selects him. I think, personally, I kind of have the same grade as Taylor Rapp. I think Deionte Thompson should go late first round to somewhere in the middle of the second round, but still a very intriguing prospect. And if you think you can get the Deionte Thompson we saw at the first half of Alabama, if you think you can refine his skills and tone down the aggressiveness and up that football IQ just a little bit, he could be a tremendous value in the late stages of the first round, early second round. And then finishing up with my #1 safety of the draft class, I have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, 6 feet tall, 210 pounds, out of Florida in 2018. He had 71 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 4 interceptions. 2 of those were pick sixes. Positives for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think he has excellent versatility. He can play free safety, he can play strong safety, he can play nickel corner, he can play money backer. He has proven production through 4 years at Florida. He has absolute leadership traits. He was the leader of our Florida Gator defense for the last 2-3 years. And really, the only negative I could say about Chauncey Gardner, some people are talking about consistency issues. A lot of different websites say, I don't see it, man. He was always good with us. And, I mean, there's no safety that makes perfect plays 10 times out of 10. I felt like he was there 85% of the time. He was in the right place at the right time. I think he has very good high football IQ. Like I said, he has a lot of those intangibles that some of these other players don't have. And the only negative I'd say for Chauncey Gardner is the combine will either solidify if he is safety 1 or say safety 2 or 3 in this draft class. And I think he's actually going to surprise some people because he will, show where some of these other guys are a little bit more stiffer, a little bit more traditional safeties. He's converted corner, so he's going to have quick hips. He's going to be more agile than some of the other guys on this list. Now, straight line speed, I've watched a lot, more so obviously Chauncey Gardner-Johnson than any other player on this list. I could not tell you what his 40-yard dash is. He could run 4.48. He could run 4.61. Well, maybe not 4.61, but he can run a 4.48 or he can run a 4.58, which again could fluctuate his draft stock just a little bit. But really, I'm expecting to have a solid to good combine, and outside of that, all of his positives for me make him the #1 safety in the class. No biases aside. And my pro comparison from him is Malcolm Jenkins. I mean, this is a very, very easy comparison to make because both these players are on my favorite teams that I support. And I see an absolute lot of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Literally was the Malcolm Jenkins of the Florida Gators last year. He is the vocal leader. He's the guy that gets everyone fired up, and he's the guy that can do every little bit of whatever he can to help the defense, and it seems like whatever position you put him there, he excels in. He was the best guy on the field. So that is why I have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as my #1 safety. And there you go. Those are my top 10 safeties right now, pre-combine for the 2019 NFL Draft. So guys, as always, if you agree or disagree with my list, let me know in the comment section below. Maybe if someone I slept on or anything like that. But thank you guys for tuning in to the 2019 draft prep. From here, I mean, now it's going to be time to get ready for the combine and get ready for all the 32-team mock drafts and more Eagle mock drafts and first round. Like, draft stuff's just starting. So I hope you guys have been able to get something or two from these lists. And as always, if you're first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.